one of you does the pointer. All right, and off you go.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, so we did our project on hypoxia on Long Island Sound.
So hypoxia is a life-threatening depletion of dissolved oxygen in coastal waters for an extended period of time. It's classified as an oxygen concentration that's at or below 3 milligrams per liter of water. The hypoxia levels in Long Island Sound have grown significantly worse since the 1950s. However, in the 2010, was actually one of the third least severe year since 1987. It only lasted for about 40 years and only covered an area of about 100 square miles.
Okay, so this diagram kind of tells you what hypoxia is. In the summer, Long Island Sound experienced a layering effect due to denser salinity and cooler water temperatures in a bottom layer. This leads to a paleocline, which prevents oxygen-rich surface waters from mixing with bottom layers. At the same time, runoff from the sound from nitrogen sources, such as different pollutants from factories and just houses in general, causes algae blooms. And as the algae dies and it sinks to the bottom, it eats up a lot of oxygen that bacteria consume the oxygen to break down the algae that's on the bottom of the sound now. And this dissolved oxygen is really bad for the animals, obviously, that live there. So animals that are able to move out, that are mobile, such as crabs, lobsters, and fish, they often do. But other animals like shellfish that can't move are stuck there and they eventually die. Okay, this slide just kind of summarizes what I just told you. But the really important thing is that algae sinks to the bottom, and bacteria that is used to decompose the algae consumes oxygen. And paleocline is the layering of the waters that prevents the mixing of more oxygen-rich waters.
So one of the big environmental factors that's causing hypoxia right now is an increased amount of nutrients, especially nitrogen, that's causing an increase in plant and algae growth. A lot of the blame is being placed on an increase in development that's increasing nitrogen runoff from power plants, vehicles, fertilizer, and treated sewage discharge.
Okay, so this map just kind of shows you where hypoxia is really, really prevalent in the sound. This is an image of Long Island Sound. Over here, where it's really, really red, is near where New York is. And then over in the blue section, that's near where like Rhode Island and Eastern Connecticut is. And these just kind of show you the hypoxia levels.
Where's New York City?
Over here.
Okay.
All right, so algae blooms are often caused by a severe increase in fertilization, combustion, and other nitrogen sources. When there are large algae blooms, there's more algae dying and decomposing, so there's an increase in the consumption of oxygen in the water. Some of the algae, especially that's caused by this, can be harmful to various animals. So one of these is red tide. Red tide algae can produce saxitoxin, which will be ingested by shellfish. When humans eat the shellfish, they can contract paralytic shellfish poisoning, which can lead to severe illness or death.
Researchers already study how compound.
What happened?
We're going to skip
It's
that
just
for time.
for time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can view it online, but we'll show you this one.
Okay. You just have to click it. Your second one, I think you click.
I don't know how to do it.
There you go.
We're going into western Shinnecock Bay, so I need a mud rig, not a hard bottom rig.
This is someone who makes
Life
a
on the
living
water
off of
is great.
shellfishing.
You're your own boss. You have a great feeling of independence. A lot of my friends still joke with me and ask me when I'm going to get a real job.
After 30 years, Bayman Ed Warner is watching his livelihood slip from these calloused, weather-beaten hands. The culprit is a microscopic organism that for 5 years has been slowly destroying Shinnecock Bay.
When I was in high school, we had probably 40 full-time baymen that particularly just worked on the hard clams. You might have 1 or 2 guys now that do it. It's really changed the dynamics of the fishing industry out here.
The brown tide is an explosion of algae that turns the bay water's color coffee brown. It first appeared in 1985, and while its cause is still being debated, its effects are obvious and devastating.
See how cloudy the water is?
According to Stony Brook University marine science professor Chris Gobler, brown tide is killing shellfish before they can even develop.
We're seeing them all over, but we're not seeing any where there's very dense brown tide, suggesting they're being killed by these blooms.
While the origin of the brown tide remains a mystery, more and more people are pointing the finger of blame at man. Overdevelopment of the East End, they claim, brings the pollutants that trigger the algae bloom.
A large share of nitrogen entering our bays, via groundwater, is being from wastewater, septics and cesspools.
With coastal development, our coastal ecosystems change with time. More people, more nutrients coming into our coastal ecosystems.
People have to be educated and aware that what they do on their properties has a direct bearing on the water.
Ed Warner has refused to be a silent observer as the brown tide attacks his beloved bay. He's worked tirelessly to replenish marine life here, but experts say a lot more needs to be done because this delicate ecosystem will not fix itself.
It will be a very sad day for us when we no longer can swim or fish in these waters because of pollution.
Greg Circle, News 4 New York.
All right, this is a map that kind of breaks down how Long Island Sound is divided. Over here near New York, we have an area that's referred to as the Narrows. Then we have the Western Basin, the Central Basin, and the Eastern Basin.
Where was the bay that that movie was about? It was part of this, part of Long Island Sound?
It's in Long Island Sound, I don't know.
I believe Shinnecock Bay is in the Central Basin.
Okay.
I believe.
All right. It's one of those inlets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and these watersheds, you can kind of see their color. Those are the watersheds that contribute to pollution to those particular basins.
Okay, so the Western Basin is one of the most stressed areas of Long Island Sound. It's very highly populated, so there's a lot of increased pollution. In addition to the fact that other pollutants and things that end up in the Eastern Basins, the current is carrying them over and they all pile up into the Western Basin where there's a lower current that can't mix it. There's a high nitrogen load, which leads to higher phytoplankton production, and all of which eventually leads to hypoxia. Now, these graphs here that you're going to see on your next slides, these are an index, the water quality index, and that uses a couple different things like the level of nitrogen in the water, amount of phosphorus, chlorophyll A, dissolved oxygen in the bottom water, and water clarity. So, depending on the different levels of that, different, it could be either poor, fair, or good water quality.
All right, this is the Narrows again, which we referred to earlier. It's the section near New York City. It's really heavily polluted, and as you can see from this water quality diagram, most of the time the water quality is considered fair. The red is poor, but as you can see with time on the bottom, it's getting better, but there's still a lot that needs to be done.
The Central Basin is the area just between the Western and Eastern Basin. It generally has good to fair water quality. It's wide, and it's fairly deep as well, and not as much development in that area.
All right, the Eastern Basin has the best water quality in the Sound. That's in part because it's the deepest. It reaches up to 350 feet in depth, while the Narrows only reaches 60 feet in depth. It also has the Race, which is an area of the Sound that's very tight between the Atlantic Ocean and the Long Island Sound, and that causes a lot of flushing in and out. And this is just a map of where the Race is. It's labeled up there. I don't know if you can see it.
And this is just an overview of the water quality over the past since 1991, just kind of give you an idea that the Eastern Basin has the best versus the other ones that are slowly getting worse.
All right. This is the dead zone, and again, this is what we were saying before. These are areas where mobile marine life will move, but ones that can't move, they die. Long Island Sound Study, really quickly, is the organization that has really been doing a lot to help bring back the quality of water, the sound. They have 7 issue areas, and one of the biggest ones is hypoxia. If you want to know more about that, you can look at that later. Good stuff. Okay. Yeah, we do. Sorry. If you're interested, you can continue these. This is just really quickly what you can do to help. Things like not flushing cleaning products down the drains, not putting medication down the drains, using non-toxic alternatives.
And if you're with lawn care, using environmentally friendly landscaping techniques. So if you have something like this, you don't want to do this because then your fertilizer and everything will run right into the water.
Look at that screen board.
Right here, you've got lots of trees and stuff that'll stop it, absorb it, and prevent it from just running into different water sources.
And one other thing that you don't even think about is car care, just washing your cars on grass rather than doing it on pavement, because that way the soaps and everything doesn't drain into the water systems. It's absorbed by the ground instead. That's it.
Good, thank you. All right, Haley and Drew. Come out here, but it's really scary.